l-Ewropija, Ewropa tan-nazzjonijiet, u dejjem kien hemm reżistenza l-introduzzjoni ta' federal structures, tipo federal autonomous budget, federal treasury ministry, etc. U effettivament li jiġri mbagħad to readjust, speċjalment dal-problemi kif ġara fil-2008 kienu budget deficit problems. L-exchange rate to become competitive does not exist anymore. U li qed jiġri biex to bring back huma jissema competitivity, ma basically to bring back budgets to balance. L-uniku mod kif isir huwa dak li jissejħu structural reforms li f'ħafna każi basically jammontaw għal miżuri li fiscal consolidation. Ġifieri what the IMF calls internal devaluation. Tnaqqis fil-servizzi soċjali, tnaqqis fil-employment, tnaqqis fil-pagi. Oh, basically, the problem there is that it's hitting across the social model Ewropew. But the only way by which countries at the fringe or countries in problems within the Eurozone can readjust under present rules, under present models, imbuttati mill-Ġermanja, there's a certain logic to it, through a reduction of the social model, through an erosion of the social model. Il-faqar żdied, nies threat of poverty żdied, il-qatt żdied, it doesn't want to come back down. U effettivament, il-soft power tal-Ewropa is being eroded by this problem. Nifhem il-gvernijiet u l-Ministri tal-Finanzi li they resist strongly any talk of writing down the debt. Ovvja, they have to respond to their constituencies because their constituencies don't want the tax dollars to be burnt down, taken down the drain, basically, or tifhem għadi. On the other hand, mill-bidunet il-loan Greek, fil-Parlament Malti kont 5 snin ilu, I was warning against this problem. Il-loan Greek, under the conditions which we know face Greece within a single monetary zone, obviously it's not working. Il-bailout plans have not worked. On the other hand, at the same time, they've piled up huge austerity on the most vulnerable parts of the Greek population. Suppost salvataġġ. U the percentage tad-dejn as percentage of GDP over the last 5 years has risen from 125 to 170% plus. Ġifieri salvataġġ is making things worse. L-ekonomija shrunk by a quarter. U l-mistoqsija hija under this bailout plan will Greece be ever able to deliver? My argument is it's not going to deliver. Jista' jibqgħu tal-kondizzjonijiet possibbli, imma something's got to give. Who Tsirpa's government is making the claim, look, our people have suffered enough. You should give us more leg space. And I think they should, yeah. The real alternative, kuku ma kienx problemi how to manage it, kuku ma kienx hemm il-fatt li l-maġġoranza tal-Griegi xorta jridu jibqgħu fil-Eurozone. The best solution would be for Greece to exit the Eurozone in an orderly manner. Li tipproteġila the social and economic framework tagħha, but that's not on the cards.
It's not on the cards, but some economists view it as inevitable anyway.
Iva, ma it doesn't apply only to Greece, by that standards. Tħares lej pajjiżi tal-periferija tas-sud u tal-periferija tal-est. Their economies are not compatible with the German, Dutch, Finnish economies. Ġifieri li ġara hu Euro power, soft power, went to the heads of the elites in Europe back in the 90s, first decade of this century. They expanded just across the board in a certain disorderly ways, that looks with hindsight. Kollox meta l-Greċja daħlet fil-żona tal-Euro wara sabu li kien hemm 3-4 years ta' national accounts tagħha kollha falsified. So, frankament. All these bureaucrats there. They didn't realize that something was wrong. Come on.
But what? This is very often criticism coming from Eurosceptic parties. And there's a tendency of Eurosceptic parties today to not all, in all cases, but to move towards the right of the political spectrum. Do you see a connection between the European Union's policies to date, the austerity that you'll be mentioning yourself, and the emergence of a more radical right wing in Europe? Do you see that?
No, it predates it. Okay. Austerity has been feeding, but quote-unquote populist parties, quote-unquote extremist parties. Why? Ovvjament, jekk austerity leads to sustained unemployment, to sustained reduction of pensions, to sustained living standards felt by many as being not acceptable. If it continues to erode the social model, ovvjament dawk li jipproponu xi ħaġa differenti will get ahead. The socialists, the democratic socialists are being squeezed by quote-unquote radical, quote-unquote populist socialist parties, Syriza, Podemos, etc. L-istess ħaġa qed tiġri fuq ir-right. Marine Le Pen, effettivament Grillo, xajti Grillo's right-wing, basically, billi għadu affarijiet oħra. Ġifieri, this is a phenomenon which is happening ukoll. L-SDP fil-Ġermanja went into a grand coalition mal-CDU-CSU, ma it's hurting again.
The population level. Are you concerned that, especially in the light of the most recent developments, that we're heading towards another Cold War, not already in one, and how, seeing as you've criticised the approach to date, how would you handle this situation?
The EU, again, it goes back to the soft power model. It's not managing its soft power well, or it has not. It has seen it as a way to expand, as another tool for expansionism. It felt happy doing that. Many people felt happy coming into that model, and I have to take account of what the reality is. The reality is being, but on the other hand, Russia has a presence in Europe, always has had, and it needs its own space. So whether that space is hegemonic or not, that's a different point. But Russia has to have its own space. And you have to understand the legitimate aspirations of the Russian rulers, quite if you want to say it that way. Yeah, I said rulers. Basically, the Russian rulers are really motivated on a quote-unquote patriotic bent by getting popular support on that basis. That's a popular mainstream concern for Russia. Ukraine, Russia mill-Ukraine breed. The original Russian nation, the original Russian nation started, Rus, in Kiev. Then they expanded towards Moscow. There's a kind of symbiosis there. You can't just neglect. I mean, this is Europe, not the Wild West. Effettivament, when you step into that region, you have to understand what the historical ħafna mill-kittieba klassiċi Russi, Ukrainians kienu, including Gogol. Qed titkellem fuq Lombardija l-Italja. If you see what I mean. That kind of concept. So, given that, the way in which you step into that region, you have to take account of political realities. Issa li EU, jekk jogħġbok, developed its association agreement with Ukraine, without ever the political side of the EU having really been on the ball for. They suddenly were surprised when the Russians started objecting. Issa jekk ir-Russi kellhomx raġuni jew le joġġezzjonaw, it depends on which perspective you want to look at. If you can justify expansionism on the part of the EU through the attractiveness of the EU's soft power, which it is attractive, on the other hand, you have to understand that the Russian side has got its own perspectives about this. So ovvjament dat tip ta' argument ma tantx jinżil tajjeb, anzi ma jinżilx tajjeb, ma places like Latvia, like Lithuania, etc., etc. Obviously. Imma ir-realtajiet hemm qegħdin, ġifieri you can't just move into a room or pretend nothing has changed once you've taken over that room. See my point?
Yes, I do.
And I refuse to take part in this kind of thing because both sides are in bad faith. Yeah, ovvja, illi dak li qed jiġri bħalissa fil-Ukraine is being fueled by Russia. Ovvja. It's equally obvious imma li r-reġim li hemm bħalissa fil-Ukraine was fueled by the EU. I mean, all right, Maidan. Fair enough. How did things come to that point? Come on. Għament naħseb li fuq il-kwistjoni tal-Libja we change the subject. Kulħadd għandu jżomm prudenza sħiħa. Ġifieri too much loose talk is not on, in my view. Speċjalment ta' ċirkostanzi, hemm xi 40 Malti għadhom il-Libja u we have to think about those as well. Naħseb l-aħjar approach hija li nħallu lill-gvern jagħmel il-kuntatti u l-parameters tiegħu, ovvjament kif qed jagħmel in consultation mal-oppożizzjoni. Ma ħafna spekulazzjoni għalija żejda. It's not on at this stage. Ovvjament il-parametri naħdmu fihom rispettaw, in my view, in-neutralità li għandha Malta u tintuża n-neutralità bħala għodda mbagħad bħala tool again biex nżommu all our bridges open to as many sectors as possible.